you've always known you're Jewish, you're proud to be Jewish, and then you step out and you realize that actually you're 0.1% of the world, and how do I want my community to be represented or be understood? That is not exclusive, not hierarchical. It's not just about us finding who we are, but also using who we are to make a wider society a better place. Welcome to Something in the Water. I'm Rachel, and this is my podcast about Budapest's Jewish community through interviews with the individuals who shape it. Thank you for being here. We are recording on June 26th, 2026. I came to Budapest for a fellowship that was always going to have an end date, and unfortunately that date is coming up. So after 9 published interviews with different leaders in Budapest's Jewish community, I thought it would be fun to spin it around and me to be the one to talk and reflect on this experience. So I invited someone who has been essential to this project's success to join me today to be the one to ask me questions. Bende Moldovan is the program manager of the Mosaic Hub, an incubator and consultancy for NGOs connected to the Jewish community in Hungary. I've spent a lot of time at the Hub over the past 2 years, most recently working for the Hub as part of my fellowship and also receiving support from the Hub for this podcast. Bende knows the project better than anyone, so he is the perfect person to take over the mic today and give me a run for my money. Bende, welcome.
Hi Rachel.
Hello.
Hi everyone, very nice to meet you all. No, just kidding. So you started with saying that you came here in the framework of a fellowship. I don't think you explained in detail, if at all, before what that was. So can you just say a few sentences about both the fellowship and how you ended up in it?
Sure. So this fellowship is through the JDC, which is a global Jewish humanitarian organization that is building Jewish life around the world and saving Jewish lives around the world. This fellowship falls into a young adult branch of JDC, which is about connecting young Jews from North America mostly with JDC's work. And the idea is that immersing us in global Jewish communities will sort of give us fire under our butts to commit to supporting JDC and supporting Jewish life around the world as we grow up and progress in our careers, whether that's as a Jewish professional or not. And the fellowship places you in different communities that JDC works in, whether that be Budapest, Krakow, Warsaw, Brussels, or even Rwanda, India, Israel. And I came here after my undergraduate degree where I'd already been involved in Jewish stuff, but not as immersive as a year-long fellowship experience. So it seemed like that would be an interesting next step to really get deep in a Jewish community that's different than what I knew growing up. The summer before I came to Budapest, I did a course in Berlin and spent the summer there. So I already had a little experience in living in a Central Eastern European city, learning about the Jewish community there. And I really liked what I learned in Berlin, so also wanted to take that to the next level. But when I started to learn about Budapest and about the Jewish revival happening here, it seemed like it would be an exciting place for me to come and contribute. And thankfully, someone who knew much better than me told me this even before I arrived, so I didn't have to come and embarrass myself. But the fact that I wasn't going to come and contribute to the Jewish revival and save the Jews, but that it was going to be the other way around. So I definitely managed to change the perspective almost right on time to come and know that I was going to try to uncover and learn as much as I could about what was going on here. My day-to-day here has been at different Jewish organizations in Budapest. The JCC in Budapest, the Mosaic Hub. I coach tennis at Camp Sarvash. And also this podcast, which has, of course, become an important part of the fellowship experience.
Can you say who the person was who told you that this is not the white savior story you imagined it to be?
Yeah, that's nice. Gideon Hersher worked at JDC for 20 plus years and met my dad years ago through Toronto Federation work, Iserlin Overseas. And I guess the minute that my dad met Gideon, really thought that he was someone special, so passionate, someone that I had to meet and learn from. So it was years before I applied to this fellowship that I spoke with Gideon and heard about Sarvash Camp. I guess Gideon and I hit it off. And then when I was looking to this fellowship, actually I applied when the fellowship application was already closed. So thanks to Gideon, I got to sort of meander that process in a different way. So he was the one that in interview preparations for the fellowship said, whoa, 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 and helped me to understand what was going on here. That was something that I had a lot to learn from. And the best part, I remember, I think preparing for this podcast, like in the planning stage, looking back at my notes from our conversations, that the people and the things that he told me to look out for in this community were really the people that I found as my mentors when I got here. Mircea, Michael Paley, The Hub were favorite projects of his and people. So I love that. That has sort of had some foreshadowing even starting years ago.
Was he the one who recommended that you come to Budapest as well, or was that not a choice in that sense?
Yeah. So the options that were most interesting to me for the fellowship were Budapest and Rwanda, which would be extremely different experiences, but for me, like, came from similar, like, I'm this person interested in some things that led me in these two different directions. In university, I did a bunch of like genocide studies work, Holocaust and other genocides, and became interested in the fact that I grew up learning a lot about the Holocaust survivors in my family, went on the March of the Living, all this sort of thing. And why did it take so long until I was in second year of university to start learning about these other similar atrocities? And so that direction of just like in general genocide studies and solidarity between groups that were victims of genocides was interesting to me. So I felt like going to Rwanda and being part of this reconciliation, seeing that firsthand, was going to be interesting to me, in the similar way that living in Budapest was going to be interesting to me, post-Holocaust, post-communism, Jewish community. Gideon definitely made it clear that these two experiences would be different. I remember the fact that in Budapest I would work and I would work and I would learn a lot about the community, and I would also have a full life outside of work, which is absolutely true of my last 2 years here. And if I went to Rwanda, I would be living in a confined village where the chances that I would make a real impact on one person's life would be greater. We talked about. So he helped me kind of put together these pros and cons lists. And then at the end of the day, you just kind of leave it up to where fate will have it. And I got selected to come to Budapest and never looked back.
Maybe you still can figure what is in the water in Rwanda as well.
Totally. Of course, now as I figure out what's next, the idea of temporary school, fellowship, internship is so great because I'm not ready to settle down and just start a job that could last forever.
There is no such a thing anymore.
Okay, yeah. That's what I try to tell myself. So we'll see how I will definitely visit Rwanda one day, even going to the museums and the memorials that I gave presentations about years ago. I'd love to be back there. And this ASYV village sounds pretty incredible. It's a village in the beginning, founded by JDC as a partner for victims, children of victims of the Rwandan genocide, people affected by the Rwandan genocide, to go to this village and be loved and be taught and to be taken care of. And today it's maybe next generation and just at-risk youth and orphans in general. and us as fellows go there to be a cousin to these kids and then also be part of whether it's the career services team or the visitors team or the, yeah, whatever it may be. Anyway, it would be a really cool experience too.
Yeah. You mentioned that your studies in university, your thesis was Lives in Tango, Jewish, Roma, and Queer People of the Holocaust. But before that, you went to, well, you went to two different schools. First, Bialik Hebrew Day School,
Yeah.
which proudly says that it's rooted in labor Zionism. And then you went to Havergal. I know I'm saying it like it's Hebrew, I know, but it sounds like, it
Bet
feels
that you
like
did your
Hebrew.
research.
It's Havergal. You went to Havergal, all-girl college, which says it is proudly rooted in Anglican tradition. So
Oh, yeah.
does that just feel or read like a very big difference, or was that one?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like I've always been both very much involved and interested in Jewish community stuff, and at the same time had a foot or more than that in just general society, being the only Jew in the room. So I went to Bialik from kindergarten, 4 years old, and had an amazing 10 years there. I have been lucky with all my schools so far, even the foundation year program at King's, my university, after the first year. At the end of Bialik, at the end of Havergal, and at the end of the foundation year program, I always said if I could stay here, I would. So I've been lucky to just have amazing teachers, like being in school. But Bialik definitely gave me a foundation of being proud of my Jewishness and feeling like I could share it, maybe having enough confidence in my Jewish knowledge to share it, but also that it was just a warm, good environment for me to grow up in. And I have 3 younger siblings, and they all went to Bialik as well, but actually none of them finished till the end. They all switched to Havergal or other schools earlier on. So I always liked learning Hebrew and learning Jewish stuff and being in that environment. I loved the Israel Interactive Center, where they would like transform this room into the desert in Israel and there'd be sand everywhere. Of course, that was so fun for me. And I was on all the sports teams there, and it was great. And even though I said when I graduated that if I could stay forever, I would, there was an option to continue to the Jewish high school, and I actually never considered that. So growing up at Bialik, I also was on like doing sports outside of school where I was the only Jew, whether that was my soccer team or my ski team. And then also even at Bialik, we started being involved in like non-sectarian community service work as a family. My bat mitzvah project sort of started it off, but just really like our parents wanted us to love being Jewish and also know that the world was much bigger. So as I was wrapping up, when I finished Bialik, I didn't consider going to the Jewish high school. I wanted to be in class with people different than me. And also this thing about Jewish day school is that you have to do so much more in one day that I guess I wanted time to figure out what I was interested in and be able to dive more deeply into that instead of having to rush through like literature class that you could get to Tanakh class, which is still important. But at this time, I just felt like I wanted more time. And then also, I mean, Havergal's an amazing school with lots of opportunities outside of the classroom. I went on an exchange to Australia with them. I went to Yellowknife, Northwest Territories with them, and a whole bunch of like awesome extracurriculars like that. But yeah, okay, so the switch from Jewish day school to all girls Anglican private high school is obviously a significant transition and change. I think for me, it only made me more excited about my Jewishness to be the only, like one of the few Jews in the grade in the room. Early on, it was the fact that I wasn't eating ham and cheese sandwiches for lunch. That was like the conversation starter. That I was 14 years old and I really wanted people to know who I was and wasn't ashamed to like just use that as a starting point to talk about this whole Jewish thing. And I have to, like, that's from Bialik, that's from my family, and that's also just from me loving to talk and always feeling like I need to express myself. um, but yeah, so being the only Jew made me appreciate my Jewishness and want to share it. And I guess also not take it for granted. Um, it was something that made me feel like special and lucky to have this part of myself that I could share with people and that was interesting to them and that was also interesting to me to dive more deeply in. And then the culmination of this Havergal experience was me being elected as the prayers prefect. So the graduating class, there's prefects, which is so yeah. I wore a tie to school a couple days a week and a kilt and loafers and high socks and this whole thing, which you would die to see those outfits today. But yeah, so it's traditional. So everyone I don't think ours had a cross on our uniform, but there is a chapel. We go to prayers multiple times a week where we sing hymns and listen to guest speakers, and there might be an opening and a closing prayer. And in grade 12, there's elected leaders from the class assigned to either be school captain or have like more specific responsibilities. And I was the prayers prefect, which welcomed the whole school into the assembly 3 mornings a week and sang hymns and sang opening and closing prayers. And for me, I don't even know what to say about the fact that I was a Jewish student doing that. It never seemed like a problem. I wasn't uncomfortable being on the stage of the chapel anytime. I mean, I liked having I liked having the stage, but I guess now looking back, like the fact that a Jewish student could have that role is special, or I don't know, makes me appreciate the school and the welcoming environment that it is. It was a smooth transition and it just made me wanting to share my Jewishness even more.
So I imagine that during day school,
Uh-huh.
Hebrew day school,
Uh-huh.
that was mostly your interactions, or it was most of your day, so it was most of your interactions with the Jewish community.
Exactly.
So when transitioning to Havergal,
Havergal.
okay,
Very good.
for the third time, it's going to be fine.
Sepia.
So when transitioning to Havergal, did you look for other opportunities to observe some Judaism, or if not observe, be part of some kind of community?
Yeah. Yeah, so at this point, so I feel like Jewishness for us, like for my family when I was in high school, or for me, it was about like contributing to your community and community service in some way, and how can you do that through a Jewish lens. So yes, every year in high school, I was part of some sort of like Jewish youth group. I think in grade 9, it was the Jewish Teen Board. In grade 10, the Jewish Teen Fellows. In grade 11, Maccabi and March of the Living. And in grade 12, this Community Leadership Accelerator, which happened during COVID for us to like start new initiatives to give back to the community. Anyway, I don't think that I was getting involved for the sake, like consciously, to be around Jews, and definitely not for the sake of religious practice, but it was the obvious choice for like where I would look to just be involved and be giving back to community in general, which in our family was definitely a priority. Like since my bat mitzvah, since at 12 years old, it was like an expectation that we would always be doing something to contribute to our local or global communities. And the Jewish thing made sense. But also, I mean, in all those years, we were also doing like food drives and just, we were also doing things non-Jewish related. But I still think that in our family, even the non-formal Jewish involvement, if we were doing anything to give back to our community, I still think that I always had this idea that that was somehow me like expressing my Jewishness, or in our house, that was the value of what it meant to be Jewish, that this is something that you would prioritize. So even if that was, we had this iconic food drive that this past year, I guess, was the last year since my youngest sister just finished high school, where the entire neighborhood, like we went to collected thousands of pounds of food from thousands of houses, recruited our soccer teams and our schools and everything to deliver flyers on the doorstep of all these homes. I think at some point we would knock on the door and say, hey, next week we're going to come pick up food. And yeah, then we would do that the next week. So we've been doing that now. If I'm 24, for the last 12 years, one sibling of us has been leading this. Anyway, so the point is that even I did look for Jewish programming, but it was a way to give back to the community, Jewish or not. And even if it wasn't a Jewish initiative, it still somehow felt Jewish in our family.
Sure. I think coming from that background and perspective, that your Jewish identity is mostly, or how you interact with the community at least, is giving back. It was important for you to do the switch before coming here, that this is not a you giving to the community kind of thing. Maybe it is. You are the one who decides that. And I don't think those two things are exclusive, but
yeah,
you did arrive here. So how were your first interactions with the community? How did you first start, I guess, meeting people and figuring out what is happening here?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I never even thought about it like that my Jewish interaction was always us giving back. And it was because, like, our parents really wanted us to know how lucky we were and not be spoiled assholes. But at the same time, now I can see that it also kind of could backfire if, like, every time you're going, you're like, I'm here to save you. Okay, yeah. So I came to Budapest. What were my first interactions with the Jewish community here? Because I'm here through this fellowship with this branch of JDC that's called Entwine, like I have the opportunity to be involved in not just my day-to-day, but also the work of JDC and Entwine and how these things intersect in Budapest. So I arrived on a Thursday or Friday, and on Sunday, an Entwine trip arrived to Budapest. So this is a group of young adults from the States to come and explore Budapest for 10 days. And that was a group of people with intellectual disabilities. And I pretty much joined the group for this whole 10-day program. So I was very lucky to, through them, be able to go and visit and get introduced to all the organizations. That's already, like, was a special experience, that, like, we went to these different Jewish institutions that welcomed this group that looked different than other groups with open arms. And I was just kind of there in the background. So that's something that, like, shouldn't be taken for granted of, I feel. In that first week, I remember I finally got to meet the Hub people and schedule follow-ups with Hub and the other Jewish organizations that Gideon had already told me about and that I was interested in. But from that first month, probably, like, one of the most striking experiences for me was at High Holidays at Teleki Shul, which I look back on this experience. I think this was a bit of a launch into even wanting to do this podcast, because so Teleki is a synagogue that they call a shtibel, so a synagogue that's pretty much an apartment unit, and maybe 25 people can fit in there tight. Like, it's a really small space. And this is a shul that has existed since at least, like, I think early 1900s. And Orthodox service pretty much never shut down in the communist period. I think even in the Holocaust, shut down for a few months, but mostly, like, was functioning behind the scenes. With the group from Entwine, we went to visit Teleki. We learned a bit about the history. I thought, okay, this is a small place, which is perfect because I don't know anyone. Someone's bound to speak to me because you can't go unnoticed here or unrecognized. I returned for High Holidays and was very surprised by what I saw. An Orthodox service, Orthodox rabbi, like I think Chabad rabbi, men and women sitting separately, and probably like you can count on one hand how many religious people are in the service. Everyone else, half of the people are wearing jeans, half the people are wearing baseball caps, like a serious mix of people there to pray for high holidays. Some people are just like reading a random book um, in their seat. Some people are just spending a whole like 3 hours preparing for the lunch, which it's not necessary to spend 3 hours preparing for the lunch, but just like no pressure to be in the prayer room, even though it's really all like one room. So just around the corner. And yeah, I'd never seen anything like this. Like just that people from all walks of life would be in this traditional service. Like non-traditional people coming to a traditional service was just something that stood out to me and made me feel like, okay, this is an interesting place. How does this work? And so after the Rosh Hashanah service, I remember we sat for Kiddush. Because I was new, I had to stand up and tell everyone about myself. When my dad came for Yom Kippur, the next couple weeks after Rosh Hashanah, he also came. He had to stand up and talk about himself. And then a year later, my mom came also for high holidays. She came. She had to talk about herself. And it's just such a warm community feeling that I'd guess in Toronto, because there's so many different synagogues, like I don't think I've ever found myself in an Orthodox service, and maybe wouldn't have felt welcomed in it. But here, I don't know. It just worked. And so that was a first moment that left me with a lot of questions, but also made me feel like, okay, I think I made the right choice to come to Budapest, because where else do you get this? And now I have a t-shirt, a Teleki t-shirt that I sometimes get stopped when I'm wearing it. And they're like, Teleki.
So when did that feeling of making the right choice here in Budapest and feeling that there is something special here turn into a want of understanding, like a kind of, not trying to say this is one, but a research project? Was there one specific moment? Was that like accumulation of experiences? I remember when you told me about this Teleki experience being very impactful on you, but that was not the exact moment you decided, like, there is something here to explore on a deeper level.
Yeah. I can remember having a coffee with Michael Paley and us starting to talk about like how I can share what's happening here with people at home. He had an idea to put together some sort of manual of like the perfect day in Jewish Budapest, because when you Google what to do in Budapest and you just get like the shoes and Dohan, which actual people in the community here might not really have connections to those places. So we started thinking about like, is this community misunderstood? How can I play a part in connecting what's happening here to people at home? So I don't know if it was a particular moment or it was just feeling interested in what was going on and wanted an excuse to like dive deeper and try to understand, that wasn't just for my own purposes, but for something greater. And from a young age, I mean, because I love to talk, we always thought about starting a blog of some sort, but never committed. Maybe didn't know the exact cause. Maybe was scared of being judged. And somehow doing scary things becomes easier when you move across the world. Because now, yeah, every day it's just like, I'm my own person. I'm not going to run into anyone who's, yeah, it's just easier to do what you want and not care what people think. So, I mean, I feel like it was already December or January when the first email was sent to you being like, let's talk about an idea, which is crazy. That's after 3 months of being here, which, like, okay, proud of myself for wanting to do something, but I don't know. I don't think it was a specific moment. I mean, it also could have been just like wanting to be able to commit myself to something that my work maybe wasn't enough fulfillment, and I was looking for other ways to get that. Uh, but yeah, and then the title, Something in the Water, you know, still getting to the bottom of it.
I think you had the title pretty early on, maybe before you knew what the podcast is going to be. But
Totally, because that's how I describe this place to friends and family on the phone. Like, which, I mean, it could just be when you, for me, like, it's special to walk around and just see Jewish paraphernalia in the city. Like, that makes me feel like, I don't know, that just, my surroundings mean something. And I want to know what it means. I know it means something. I don't know what. Uh, so yeah, the title made sense for that reason.
so in the very beginning, when you started thinking about the podcast, and this is our last question to the before time, uh, was this in your mind? I will give you several options, and
Thank you.
not those are not exclusive.
Okay.
So was this in your mind a research project, an educational project, just a very convoluted way to check back with the family at home? Let's try to be busy or be productive project. Which one was it, or to what extent was it? Which?
I mean, there are definitely aspects of everything that you just said that are part of this project. Uh, I guess mostly research, like investigating what is going on here. How can I understand it better? So maybe research for myself, like, okay, how can I put a finger on what to me feels special, feels alive? And then also an educational project for people at home. Uh, that was always like a big priority about this, that I'm lucky to be here and be learning about what's going on here. And it's important to me to share what's going on here with people at home, because in North America, you often learn that Jewish life is like American diaspora and Israel, and that Europe is a graveyard for the Jews. You come here with the March of the Living and you barely touch on Jewish life that exists here today. So I was seeing firsthand that that's not true, and that your Jewish identity can be so much richer with an understanding of the diverse Jewish communities around the world, especially in Europe. And so I wanted to, uplift those stories, share those stories, and contribute to like a more richer, diverse understanding of the Jewish world, and also for people to listen and feel like this can become part of their own Jewish identity, how they live as Jews, how they interact with their communities. And then getting feedback from my grandparents on all these episodes has been so beautiful. And I didn't think about that before, but of course, having this diary now of my time here, yeah, I'll share it with my kids.
So that explains some of the motivation, but it doesn't explain the format. So
Of the podcast?
yeah,
Mm.
I mean, just the fact that it's a podcast, like it could have been a blog.
Totally.
It could have been like a series of written interviews. It could have been
Totally.
whatever you can imagine, YouTube channel. So why a podcast?
Yeah. Okay. I mean, I really like listening to podcasts. I like to talk, and I love to talk to people, and I like to ask questions. And it felt for me like if I try to take my strengths as a like natural communicator and someone that can make people feel at ease, the podcast could work for that. Of course, like, I mean, probably leading up to this, the interviewing was the least worrying part. All the technical stuff was more scary. Once I began, I realized that there is this art of interviewing, that it's not the same as just having a normal conversation. And at the same time, like, this just feels like a skill set that is me. And at this point, like, I had moments of being like, okay, do I want to be a like policymaker, diplomat? No, now I feel like I want to be the person asking questions to that policymaker, that diplomat. So yeah, this form feels natural to me as someone that like has grown up not really having stage fright, spoken in front of 30,000 people at We Day. Like, that is good for me. And then, okay, it's not about me. I've met really amazing people here, and being able to hear someone's voice is it's a game changer. So this format works so well for that. And I feel like you can listen and you can really imagine this person and the way that they think in a way that's different than writing, or in a way that's different than reading something. And I'm really happy to be able to have conveyed that.
So
Video, maybe I'll get there one day. For now, I'm shy, and it's just like too much technical work that I don't know about yet. But if you could do the option of listening audio or video, of course, that would be so cool.
so you said you are an avid listener of podcasts. I am one as well.
You
That's
are.
also why we worked on this, I would say, pretty closely.
Yeah.
Some of the podcasts that we listen to, we do share. Some of the passion that we have towards podcasts, we do share. Did you have any inspirations before starting your own, or even throughout the process?
I mean, my favorite podcaster and celebrity crush is Ezra Klein. It's a bit different for me because I really like Ezra talks in his episodes, and you know what he thinks. For me, that's not what this experience has been about, but still, I mean, I've of course like just taken inspiration from him in the way that he asks questions and in the way that he listens. Other than Ezra, yeah, I listen to other like political related shows and Jewish related shows, but I don't know, I guess because those people are all themselves political commentators and like further along in their careers, maybe they were previously like a speechwriter for a president. I'm not I'm not doing this off of them. I'm just trying to understand people who know a lot better than me and being the person to guide the conversation and connect these stories to listeners. Some podcasts that I've listened to that I feel like there is a interviewer and there is an expert, I'm sensitive to when the interviewer is interrupting or is like overstepping too much. And I mean, this experience, like I'm not posting the raw interview, I'm not posting the live interview. We can do whatever editing is needed. That for me, seeing that and like seeing people interrupt or control the direction too much, I guess I've learned from that how I want the guest to feel and how I want to think as the interviewer, that like I'm setting the guest up for success, and I want them to feel like they're in a living room and they're comfortable and that I want to hear whatever they have to say. Other than that, my tennis podcasts, I try not to rant like Auntie Roddick does about tennis being the hardest sport in the world, even though I do think that. Tennis players being the best athletes in the world.
So you did take on more a role of an interviewer rather than someone who is having a direct conversation or is in direct conversation with the guest.
Yeah.
But there are parts where you use your personal experience, whether it be positive or negative, to empathize with the guest and use that to move the conversation forward. Was that like a conscious thing from the beginning, or just something that was the art of podcasting that you learned along the way?
Yeah, thanks. You know, I think of myself as someone who like can make people feel comfortable quickly and at ease quickly, connect with people quickly, talk to anyone. And my strategy for doing that has always been being open with who I am so that this person feels like they can do the same in return. Being open with who I am so that they see that I trust them and they can trust me, and just kind of set an example with that, okay, not everyone needs to share everything on the first day, but for me, I'm just yeah, like I said earlier, I'm okay to talk about my feelings. So in some ways, it's natural to me to share who I am to help the person share who they are. Uh, about interviewing, I think I had an idea coming into it that it would be a strategy for me to continue to direct the conversation by sharing about myself. So it's both. It's both was the idea from day one and also developing my style of interviewing. But we talked about from day one that our favorite podcast we listen to also because we feel connected to the host and we like the host and we feel like we know the host. And so I guess I was aware of that too, that I can't be a complete robot. I have a personality. How can you show it just the right amount? So it's been funny. Sometimes we finish the interview and the guest is like, we need to keep talking because your reactions and your comments were really interesting to me, but you didn't really keep going on that, which is honestly perfect for me. For the sake of the interview, it's like the guest knows that I'm with them and then they're inspired to keep their like they want to keep talking. And I'm always open for a follow-up coffee after an interview like this, but yeah. I mean, it's both just like who I am. It works for interviewing and it makes it more enjoyable for the listeners.
I, w- I will try not to make this too insider baseball for the listeners' sake and be it a meta conversation about a podcast.
Okay.
But I think it's it's still important and interesting to learn about the process of planning to some extent or how you made decisions throughout.
Mm-hmm.
One of them being obviously the people that you interviewed. Uh, I think you did not interview like leaders of big institutions or people who could be constituted from the outside or could be said are leaders of representative bodies, let's say. Why?
Jewish Budapest that I know is regular people, grassroots initiatives. These are the people that I know. The governing bodies do not, from my experience here, like, are not so much concerned with the Jewish communal cultural life that's happening in Budapest that I've been interacting with. I'm more interested in talking to the people that are on the ground, doing their own thing, a little weird, a little different, trying to do something that's never been done before. Um, those are the stories that I want to hear for now. And also, just it's about timing and luck and who you meet and who you get introduced to. There have been some leaders of Orsay, which is the Jewish university, representative from the Federation. We did have that. But yeah, some of the highlights have been just people who are finding their way to contribute. And it might be through like forging their own path, not necessarily through an institution. And sometimes I guess that's where the biggest impact can be made.
So the podcast was never trying to represent the whole of Jewish life here. That was never its purpose, at least from my understanding. Uh, Still, do you see a gap if given more time of a person, of someone, an organization, of somewhat or some part of the community that you think should be
Yeah.
part of it?
Yeah. No, definitely. Like, I was always going to be here for a limited amount of time. So the interviews were going to be about that individual person's experiences and impressions on the community and dreams and ideas for the community. And it's important to listen to it as that one singular person's take. And they might, have people with them and be a leader, but it's not that they represent everybody. The preparation for the interviews and deciding who to interview, like, they've been from artistic background, tech background, cultural background, educational background. There's been some good diversity. We've missed a more religious person on the podcast to talk about what it means to be a religious Jew in Budapest. We did have a modern Orthodox, even though there's maybe one modern Orthodox in Hungary. So that's definitely someone speaking for themselves. So that's a miss. And even over my time in Budapest, like I've kind of become more interested, I think, in Jewish religious and spiritual life. And like maybe for myself, just been curious about how I could discover that world a little bit more, whether that's through Jewish texts and learning or through going to synagogue more often. And then also a colleague and friend from the hub who's also who's also involved in the community was very smart to say that everyone that I've interviewed is over the age of 40. Good thing you're here. And there are many Jews in their teens, in their 20s, who grew up in this community and are proud to be part of this community and don't see themselves going anywhere and are like coming up with ideas of how to contribute to making this place better. The young people that are my peers and my friends, they deserve a stage too. I guess part of it is that like these people that are over 40 that grew up either before the fall of the Iron Curtain, during that period or after, and like witnessed the revival, part of them, yeah, having firsthand experience then like makes their story richer, and gives them a bit of a journey that I was curious about. Whereas the people my age maybe are more like me, where they grew up Jewish and they went to Jewish camp and they went to Jewish school and they know who they are. They've always known who they are, but still, that doesn't mean that they don't have a story to tell.
So obviously the individual interviews, their experience and what they drove from it, what you now said is their journey is highly subjective. But still, do you think there is like this collection of them leads to some kind of insight, or somehow do you see maybe any kind of underlying thread through listening to these conversations?
Not everyone falls into this, but I would say that like there is a turning point for people when they decide that being Jewish or learning about Judaism is something that they care about. Like, I don't think that these people that I interviewed were born this way. Whereas for me, I was born this way almost because I was sent to, like, I was just in a Jewish community doing Hanukkah performances from the time I was 5 years old. Like, these people that I'm talking to, it happened later in life that being Jewish is something that they are interested in and want to dive deeper into. So, like, first interview with Zhuzha, it happened in her late teen years that she never even knew she was Jewish before. And then it was a traumatic event that, like, introduced her to this world. And at some point, slowly but surely, through friends and going to bars, like she talked about after Shabbat services, going to this restaurant to just sit and drink and talk and listen to the rabbi too, but that it was just because of being part of a community. The underlying thread that is that at some point people choose that this is something that they care about. Like, it's not that you're just born into it. And even like for Barna, who is doing this If These Streets Could Talk project now, it seems like almost throughout the making of the project, he's uncovering his Jewish identity too. Like, it's ongoing for all these people. It's not always like a conscious choice that I'm going to do this for the community now, but that it's just happens.
We had a lot of conversations before actually starting to do the podcast of what this podcast is going to be. The podcast itself, the idea didn't change a lot, but the wordings you use to describe it did. But one of the things that withstood all of these conversations was not taking it for granted. I think even in this conversation, you said it a few times. What does that mean for you and in the context of these interviews?
Yeah, you're right. That's stuck with me this whole time. Uh, which also, like, I feel like part of the reason we lost things along the way was about making sure that I wasn't telling listeners that this community is amazing and like we have a lot to learn from it, because what if the person themselves has a lot of struggles or criticisms for their own community, and I want them to come and feel like they can share that. But the taking Judaism for granted thing, what does that mean to me? Uh so in some ways, like, I could say that my own story, this thing of taking your Judaism for granted or not, has come in and out. First, I mean, leaving Bialik and going to Havergal and realizing that, okay, I need to do something about my Judaism for it to mean anything. That when I came to Hungary and learned about people who learned about families where Judaism was lost after the Holocaust and in the decades of communism, and that with the fall of the Iron Curtain, many people, like, the Judaism was just completely lost in their families, whether the parents or grandparents decided to tell their kids or their grandkids, that was another story. But then what happens when you do decide that you want the next generations to know of their Jewish heritage? I mean, I first learned about sending a kid to Sarvash camp and the kid finding out when they get to camp that they're Jewish years ago from Gideon. But something about that really sticks with me, that you are told that you have this Jewish heritage and now you have to decide what that means to you, which I feel that at home, mostly you don't have a choice to make because you do what your parents and your grandparents have always done. Whereas here, you do have a choice to make, to dive into Judaism, to learn about it, to practice it, to spend time with other Jews. There's just something about that choice that to me is not to, like, that to me will change your life. That is something that you might not know why, but you know that there's something in the water in this Jewish thing that you want to investigate. And if you don't make that choice, it's going to disappear. It doesn't mean not taking your Judaism for granted means that you have to go to synagogue. It doesn't mean that. It's just a way of thinking that this is something that matters to me and that I'm going to make that choice. And at home, I just like don't see that people have to make that choice, except for the fact that my mom's dad, his family was from a shtetl in Poland. And my Zadie arrived in Canada when he was 7 years old, born somewhere along the way from their escape not long before the Nazis arrived in their town in Poland, to being in DP camps, to arriving in Canada years later. And my Zadie was raised Jewish in Toronto, met my Nana, non-Jewish, and my mom was raised in Calgary, not Jewish, because she had a non-Jewish mom, Jewish dad, and they decided that this was going to make things easier. And when my mom was in university, spent a lot more time with her dad's parents, who were Holocaust survivors, and felt connected to Jewishness. And then I think it's that she went to some family member's funeral who said, like, oh, and this person was so lucky because all their grandkids are Jewish. And my mom was like, oh my God, what are they going to say at my Bubby and Zadie's funerals? So she started converting to Judaism in her 20s. Within my family, I feel like maybe there is a little bit of like, we're not going to take this for granted. The fact that my mom chose this, and maybe my Zadie said no when my mom was getting bored and then came back to it when his dad died. So there's something special to me about what it means to choose to be Jewish. And again, like, it's not about going to synagogue. It's just about the way that you think about yourself and your place in the world, and that it's something that I embrace. I come to Hungary, and to not take it for granted means to embrace it. And that could mean many different things. But that's something that inspires me, and something that maybe I would say I want to see more of. Like, not that I care what other people do, but that when you embrace it, it also means that you criticize and you ask questions and you just think deeply, rather than just like doing what's always been done.
At least for me, this podcast in its purest form is an exploration of how the personal contributes to the communal.
Mm-hmm.
But almost as much it is about how a community contributes to the person. Uh, After all this research or analysis, what do you think the people growing up in this current community will want to change?
One main thing is the fact that here, like, there is a formal Jewish federation that is taking care of the religious, neolog things in Hungary, not so much the Jewish communal life. And even though that's what makes up like 95% of the Jews are not going to synagogue and are involved, or if they're going to be involved in anything, it's going to be in more community, cultural things, social innovation. Hopefully, in the future, there is going to be more of a framework of support from the, powers that be for the like local community and cultural initiatives that at the moment don't get support from the federation. If you grew up in Sarvaj in youth groups, you've always known you're Jewish, you're proud to be Jewish, and then you step out and you realize that actually you're 0.1% of the world, and how do I want my community to be represented or be understood by the wider society? Maybe that is where the answer is, creating this community or this reputation that is not exclusive, not hierarchical, but a community that is gonna make the general society a better place, not just the life for the Jews. It's not just about us finding who we are, but also using who we are to make a wider society a better place.
The world has changed a lot since you arrived. The world both, and maybe to some extent Hungary as well. In your opinion, what were the most significant changes, global or just in the environment outside of the Jewish communities, that affected the community here and
Yeah.
community members here most?
Within Hungary, the fact that Pride's coming up this weekend, I was thinking about how last year's Pride was just an incredible turnout, that should have that gave us confidence that this election would turn out the way that it was. People want to stand up for their rights, and it's not that something's in the water, it's just that this country became in a dire state in the last 16 years, and this is the last chance to make change. But of course, to witness this, to see the Jewish community come together, stand up for democracy, LGBTQ rights, human rights, that was significant. And then the election that happened this year, to be on the streets for events for a couple weeks, to see young people out and celebrating, was amazing. And I mean, since the election, asking people what it means for the Jewish community, no one knows the answer, but it's just nice to see people's face kind of light up and feel like, okay, now we have a chance to have more freedom to build the community that we want, instead of anytime we try to do anything, just be shot down. I think it was Barna that said that it doesn't take much time to tear down systems that were working, and it takes a lot more time to build it back up. So now I guess that process will start, and hopefully there will be more people to support each other. And then also the war in Israel in the last 2 years since I've been here. I mean, it's obviously been going on for more than 2 years, but hasn't really stopped in all my time in Hungary. And of course, this is something that affects Jewish communities around the world, and that Jewish leaders and Jewish people are thinking about and maybe adjusting their thinking or having conversations based on. It's interesting that like we have these interviews, and people so naturally like can make criticisms of their local community that they're from, which they live in and they love and they want to contribute to, and they also are willing to criticize. And it's much harder to do that for people about Israel. The community has dealt with the war in different ways, whether it's like a debate series happening that, organizations try to do, and then they turn into screaming matches, or people write petitions and sign petitions saying that we are Zionists and we also believe in self-determination for the Palestinian people and are upset by the war and destruction in Gaza. And that also causes, response and conversations, or maybe fighting and tension within the community. I mean, in general, the war, what's happening in Israel, like makes it harder to be Jewish around the world. For me, it makes it harder to be Jewish. And in Hungary, to me, it feels different than when I was in Toronto or in university, because here you don't see Palestinian protests and flags that are like in your face. Okay, we need to be talking and thinking about this. It seemed like Jewish identity had less to do with Israel here in Budapest than it did for me growing up in Toronto. Maybe because Toronto's a newer Jewish community, whereas Jewish life in Hungary goes back way, way further, and there's more heritage to connect to, and there's more history to connect to. That Israel doesn't need to be as central of a pillar of Jewish identity. And at the same time, I know it still is for many people.
In the last 2 years, but definitely in the last several months, you've also been on a more personal journey trying to find your place in the world and figuring out what's next in your life.
Yeah.
Through interviewing and exploring the interviewees' lives in depth, you were personally inspired or influenced by some. Is that fair to say?
Definitely. Even just this act of interviewing and doing a podcast has definitely influenced me and how I think about my career trajectory and my skill set. That in some ways, this is also a journalistic endeavor, like it is an investigative or research or educational. And that's been amazing for me to explore. When my Zadie listened to the Sonia interview, he told me, and at this moment in your life, it's clear that you're also interested in her path on a personal level. I'm talking to people who are finding their skills and finding how they can use their skills and who they are and what they're passionate about to make the greatest impact on their community. And that's the question that I'm asking myself. From all the interviews, I walk away with some line that's stuck in my head, I would say. So, like most recently, the interview with Adam, how he talks about struggling to call it a Jewish organization because somehow that makes it exclusive. That kind of gives me language to what I've been feeling. Why do I find it hard to find a place for myself in a Jewish organization moving forward? Why does in some ways that feel like it's going to close me off from the world, even though so far for me, my Jewishness is a way to open up to the world and share myself and learn about others. There's been that thread of like sharing our Judaism with the world in different conversations. Like Barna's project is not primarily for the Jewish community in Budapest. It is to get people to come face to face with stories that they don't already know, and to not just treat Jewish people differently and Jewish spaces differently, but to have a sixth sense when you are interacting with people in places different than you. All these people that I've talked to glow when they talk about what they're doing and have found something that makes them happy and are confident in the contributions that they've made to their community and are just doing their own thing, setting an example of making a contribution to the Jewish world in a way that works for them and asking themselves questions along the way and learning as much as they can along the way. For me, is just going to be the path to a fulfilling career and a fulfilling life. So talking to people that are walking the walk selfishly, like at this moment where the next steps are unknown for me, is something that I'm really fortunate to be exposed to.
So your podcast coming to an end, at least in its current form, is also means the end of your time in Hungary, as you said in the intro, in this community as well. But this goes more for your non-communal life. What is it that you are taking with you for the long road ahead from your general experience here, not just with the community, but your life that you did spend here?
I'm taking so much. Becoming immersed in this community and becoming interested in this community will now be part of what it means for me to be Jewish, to like always be interested in Jewish lives that are different than my own and what I can learn from different Jewish communities. I'm so lucky to have had 2 years here, and I started this project thinking, okay, we have a lot to learn from Budapest, and then someone told me, okay, we have a lot to learn from every community. Like, it's not like this place is better than others. It's just where you're lucky enough to be and where you're learning from. But anywhere you go, there's always lessons and there's always challenges. I'm excited to continue to ask these questions and discover more different types of Jewish communities. The people that I've met here, people that are so committed to improving the situation here for civil society organizations, for regular people, for Jewish organizations. It's amazing to be around this kind of like innovative energy. And I hope that I'll be able to continue that way of thinking with me. I want to continue to ask questions about the physical space around me and learn about what happened here that can just make my daily life way more meaningful, to know that there is a rich Jewish history or just rich history here, period. And then, I mean, I moved here. I didn't know anyone. I'd never been to Budapest. And now I'm leaving with the most amazing friends, feeling so part of something within the Jewish community, feeling like I have amazing mentors. I don't know how I got so lucky that this all happened for me. Those people I will keep in touch with and carry with me. But actually also the fact that like here, I am involved in the Jewish stuff through the podcast and through my work. And then also in my friends outside of work, I'm the only Jewish person that my closest friends have met. Like it feels like my task in some ways, if I'm going to be the one Jew in the room, it's going to be the one to answer the questions with a smile and offer time for more questions, to be able to like be in these two worlds at once and share the Jewish world with the non-Jewish and vice versa. So yeah, I've learned a lot in my time being here.
I'm going to make you read this. I'm sorry. For listeners, it's from the original concept paper that you wrote for the podcast.
Yes.
It is the outcome level that you defined through what effect the podcast will have on individuals. Can you please read it?
Yeah. Listeners will come away with a deeper appreciation for the diversity possible within Jewish life. They will be moved by the ways individuals build Jewish identity and be inspired to consider how they themselves engage with their communities as well as how they welcome others. By highlighting stories of resilience, choice, and meaning, this project will help listeners understand that being Jewish is not something to be assumed, it's something to be embraced. And with that awareness comes pride in one's Jewishness, an opportunity to take action to celebrate it in a way that works for the individual.
For the listeners, but also you are one of the listeners, maybe the person who listened to these interviews the most, for sure the person who listened to these interviews the most. If we look at this as a research project, which Aniko, sorry, this is not a representative thing, but as a sample of one, is that true for you?
Okay, so I can split this up into different parts.
Sure.
So I already talked about how, for me, what I'm taking away is this appreciation and awareness for the diversity possible within Jewish life. An interest in what makes Jewish communities different that is now part of, for me, what it means to be Jewish, is to be interested in those questions and those differences. Here where it says, as well as how they welcome others, I immediately think of Golem Theater, where the actors are mostly not Jewish, telling Jewish stories and being brought on a 24-hour Jewish experience. Jewish University, non-Jewish students there. If These Streets Could Talk, mostly for non-Jews. A lot of these projects have clear intersection with the outside world, and not just intersection, but like intimate connection with people that are not Jewish, trying to help us understand each other. Chaver Foundation, obviously. So to me, this first part here, how do I engage with my community and how do I welcome others? The conversations that we've had and the project that these people are doing, like some of them are exactly that. I engage with my community through presenting the Jewish stories to the wider environment and welcome non-Jews to act out those stories and watch those stories and ask questions about those stories. There's no difference between me engaging in my community and me welcoming others to witness that and talk about it with me. And so I think that this first part, these people are amazing, who are dedicated to their Jewishness, but not within their bubble. Like, they're dedicated to their Jewishness and are sharing it with the world in different ways. For me, that's what I want for myself too. And I hope that listeners are seeing that.
What about the last part?
And the last part. So yeah,
With the awareness.
I I mean, I was even like specifically thinking about this in the context of Israel war stuff and feeling like, why is it that it's so hard for us to like question or criticize what's happening there? If we love Israel, if we want there to be a Jewish state, if we have family in Israel, just like we love our home community, we have family here and we criticize here, why is it harder to make criticisms there? And that like a difference that I saw or something that I thought we could learn from Hungary is that like here, because you are not taking your Judaism for granted, because you are embracing your Judaism, everything you do is a choice, meaning that you're not just inheriting beliefs. Some people are today, but like you have the power to choose and to second guess what you have to say about your Jewish community, your Jewish identity, the Jewish world, Israel, whatever it is. And that I thought that these types of stories of questioning your identity and coming to your Jewish path in different ways, we could listen to that at home and see that we also have that same power to question our identity and move in our Jewish path in different ways. And that just because you criticize or question doesn't mean you dislike or don't believe in something. Like it's just part of being Jewish that you are going to ask questions and struggle and do it in your own way. And here I'm talking to people who have struggled with their identity in one way or another. And we can be doing that too. So, with that awareness comes pride in one's Jewishness. When you are choosing to be Jewish, when you are not taking your Jewishness for granted, when you're embracing it, for me, that is also a choice that this is something that you're proud of. This is something that you're embracing. And it also gives you power to do with it what you will. And here the people that we've talked to like have quite a diversity of Jewish practice and of ideas for the community and of their own contributions. These are hopes and dreams that these stories can inspire this type of thinking. I think that like what we're demonstrating is this like engaging with your community in different ways, welcoming others, wanting to share what it means to be Jewish with the world. And yeah, I only can hope that this leaves listeners wanting to do the same, wanting to embrace their Judaism and wanting to struggle with their Judaism too.
Before asking the last and most important question, if you let me, I would, for one sentence, address the listeners. As we said before, we are both avid podcast listeners, and podcast as a format is somewhat well flexible, and sometimes I know I am guilty of this, that it can be in my mind slotted between somewhere entertainment, infotainment, and like gathering of information, and it's easy to forget when listening to podcasts that the people you are listening to and what they are talking about are real things. Just the virtual nature puts some distance between you. So I just want to encourage listeners to embrace that the people they listen to is not just some kind of virtual stuff, but actually people at this moment contributing to this community. And do feel free to reach out to them. I'm sure Rachel can make it happen if you found someone specifically interesting or their work. Do reach out to them. They are doing this work currently, and thank you. And the most important question, 2 years in the Hungarian food scene. What is your favorite restaurant to recommend to people who are coming here? It can be a top 3 if you cannot choose.
Okay, my favorite Hungarian restaurant is Kisbiak Bistro. My favorite Asian fusion restaurant is 101 Bistro. And my favorite Aperol Spritz is at the Kadarka on Margaret Island near the beach volleyball.
Thank you, Rachel. You did good. And this is a very valuable project. And we hope it continues in some way, shape, or form. Thank you.
Thanks, Bende, and thanks, everyone. Thank you for being part of this Something in the Water project in Budapest in this last year. It has been very meaningful for me to speak with these amazing people and share these stories with you. I hope that you've taken away something from some conversation, and I also look forward to continuing to meet interesting people with interesting stories and hope to share them with you. So we'll keep you posted for the next chapter of this project. Take care.